All right, so I am sitting here talking to Daryl Colyer of the NAWAC. So for those that are not familiar with that, it's the North American Wood Ape Conservancy. So Daryl is on the board of directors. Daryl is also the field ops coordinator for the group. And what I'm going to do, I have no desire to get into the world of podcasting at all, but whenever I have a writer's block, I want to get some people on the site that have influenced me and kind of how I feel about the subject. And this guy is definitely one of the top ones here. So you may have heard him on the Bigfoot show. You may have heard him on Sasquatch. You probably have read some things that he's written or contributed to. So this is Daryl Colyer. Daryl, thank you so much for taking the time out on this Saturday evening to talk to me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. You must rate pretty high because I'm taking time out of watching the St. Louis Cardinals to be part of this. So
That's right. That's right. Yeah, I'm a diehard football fan, so I'm like just itching, getting ready for football season to kick back off. So you're a baseball guy?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I like football.
Yeah.
I played football
Yeah.
also, but baseball is like that's my number one sport.
Cool. Yeah. We're football is almost here. So I think kind of one of the way for those that aren't familiar with you and kind of what the NAWAC does, I think probably the best way for us to get into just all the things I'd like to cover in the next hour or so is just have you kind of give us I guess basically a basic rundown of kind of you. I understand military history, and as we go in talking about the NAWAC, I think people will be able to kind of see where that military influence is there within the structure of the organization and kind of how you guys do things. So if you want to just talk about kind of your background, where you're coming from, and then just feel free to take it on into kind of the formation of the different variants of what led up to be the NAWAC as kind of people would know it now.
Yeah. Well, I'm originally from Northeast Texas, and we moved from there when I was 8 years old or so. Moved to Central Texas, and I joined the United States Air Force. When I was of age, and got into the intelligence field, and I was an airborne intelligence operator. 6 years active duty, 2 years in the reserves, and flew several dozen missions around the globe, and that played a big role in who I am today. I'm no longer in the military now. I'm in the financial industry, but being in the Air Force and in the intelligence community really just it molded me into much of what you see today when you interact with me. And that plays a role, even today. Like in the NAWAC, I'm the field operations coordinator, and I have that military background. I also have a degree in history, a bachelor's degree in history, and so I think in terms of critical analysis, that's how I look at everything, and I think that's what the study of history does. It leads you to have that sort of critical analysis, and so all that comes to bear with my role in the NAWAC, and I had an interest in this subject because I originally was from Northeast Texas, and you may not be old enough, but there's a famous film from that area called The Legend of Boggy Creek. And I was like 10 or 11 years old when that thing came out, and we already knew about all that. Mm-hmm. I mean, I knew about all those stories when I was young, when I was much younger, and cousins, aunts, uncles, and parents, everybody used to talk about, the wild man or the creature, or the monster or whatever, and it was just something that you just, you knew about. And my dad's got all these stories that he would tell us, and so, so I knew about this at a very early age. Stuff happened at the school where my older brother and sister went to, and so I always had this interest. And when I got into the Air Force, I made a vow to some of my fellow airmen that one day I was actually going to look into this thing for real. That if it's a real animal, then it can be found. Like Schwarzenegger says on Predator, if it bleeds, we can kill it. Well, if it's real, you should be able to find it. And
Absolutely.
So I said, I'm just going to go for 2 weeks or 30 days or whatever, and just see if I can, find out if this thing's real or not. I forgot about that after I left the Air Force many years. I forgot about the whole subject, and I was on a trip west one time, I think 2001, 2002, And my kids we were going through some heavily forested country in New Mexico and mountainous. And one of my kids just, my stepson or somebody just said, "Hey, do you think Bigfoot could live here?" And I was like, good question. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. And so the wheels started turning again. And, I got online and came across the name of an individual named Alton Higgins, who is now the chairman of the NAWAC. And at the time, he had written a report of some things, the Washita Project that he had done in actually the area we now call Area X, which is southeastern Oklahoma along the Arkansas-Oklahoma state line. And I looked him up and found him and paid him a visit, and we struck up a fast friendship. Today we're the best of friends, and here we are together trying to bring this thing into the light of the world. And that's pretty much my background and how I got into this whole thing,
Yeah, I think that's interesting. The fact that because that was one of my questions, was going to be kind of what sparked your interest in the subject, and I can definitely see where growing up kind of in Northeast Texas, being so close to Falcon, all that good stuff, that you're gonna hear about that constantly.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I remember even after we moved from there, and we would go back because I spent many holidays, and in summertime we'd go back, and the first thing I would ask my aunt, my uncles, "Have you heard any new stories? What's the latest?" And they would say, "Oh, such and such out there, near Bloomberg, something got his hogs and whatever, and or such and such down the road says they saw one of those monsters, or something like that." Or back then they called it the monster. It was one, they saw the monster. It never occurred to anybody that it was a species of animal. That it's just a monster, which of course now we know that's not the case, but that was common, and we always look forward to hearing the latest stories. Every time we go back home. So. Yeah,
that's something I want to talk about in a minute too. Is I think that's a big misconception, and I don't necessarily know who's going to be watching this. I know in general what my readership is of the site, and they tend to be fairly well versed on the subject. But at the same time, I think a lot of people are not even familiar or not even aware of the basic fact that they're if this creature, and we'll talk about that too, my ifs and your I believe certainties exist, there's going to have to be a breeding population. There's going to have to be more than one. There's going to have to be, there's going to have to be enough of them. So it's not the monster like, people, I know when I was younger, Bigfoot lived in the Pacific Northwest, and it was a single creature that roamed around out there, and somehow it just continued to live forever without the need for.
Well, that's the way monsters are, right? I mean, there's only one Godzilla. There's only one king. There's only one, Wolfman or whatever, Dracula. But this is not a monster, and so. But the media has portrayed it as though it's some sort of monster, but it's not. Not a monster. What the NAWAC's official position is that this is a species of animal. We believe it to be a species of ape that has just remained hidden here in North America, and so once you kind of get past that idea that this thing's not a monster. People say, "Well, you mean there's more than one?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, this is not Santa Claus. This is not the Easter Bunny. It's not the Tooth Fairy we're talking about. It's a species of animal."
Right.
Well, how can a whole species hide in North America? Well, we can talk about that. Right. But we're not talking about one. I mean, it's not a monster. It's not some creepy. Right.
Exactly.
Something off the Scooby-Doo or whatever.
Right, exactly. I think it's really funny to me because it's the media and even other sections of kind of like the Bigfoot culture. They want to make it so much more than it is. And my argument is always, is it not fascinating enough that there is the potential for a large undiscovered primate to be wandering around the wooded areas, the unpopulated woods of North America? Is that not, why do we need to assign it? Why does it need to shapeshift or cloak or be an alien or be able to mind speak with someone or whatever? Why can't it just be fascinating enough that there is a large primate wandering around? I mean, like, what more could you ask for? I feel like so many people need to make it more.
Adam, I think it's because it still is at large, and it's still a mystery, it's still undiscovered, and people find that really hard to believe. Well, why? How? If it's a species of ape, we're talking about great apes. We discovered all these other great apes. Why is this one still not discovered? It must have some sort of super attributes. It must have some sort of ability to cloak itself, or to to intellectually communicate with humans, or to read our minds, or it must be, maybe it's an alien. I mean, that explains it. So,
right.
but but the things that we've observed in the NAWAC, it is so logical why this thing has remained at large. I mean, some of the things we've observed, I mean, it's just the speed of these things is incredible. And you couple the speed with the intelligence and with the power, it's just an amazing creature. I mean, and I have no problem understanding now why it's still not discovered. We've been knocking our socks off for the last 5-6 years, really hard, staying in this one place. We've had opportunity after opportunity, and we still haven't been able to do it.
Right.
I mean, they learn quickly. I mean, man, you usually only get one mistake, and then they learn it, and then they adapt, and it's so hard to convey this sort of thing to someone who hasn't been there and someone who hasn't experienced these things with us. But all I can say is that I'm totally not surprised by their ability to elude humans, and part of it's humans. I mean, part of it is that humans just, I mean, we've even got our own guys who have had visuals before, who see these things and think, their initial thoughts is, who is that? Who is that over there? Hey guys, is that you? I just saw. No, that wasn't us. We're here at base camp or whatever. Well, I just saw an upright dude or whatever, and he's like totally brown. I'm like, okay, think about it. Just saw, I mean, it wasn't one of us, and there's nobody out here. And then you go and you do a recreation. You go and you see where the thing was 7.5 feet tall by looking. You go to the tree where he sees the tree. He sees it walk by the tree, or he walks down a trail, and you can then deduce how big the thing was, and then it begins to sink in. It's just, I have no problem whatsoever understanding how they've remained so elusive.
Right, and it's like you said too, that as a human being, our first inclination is when we see something like that, is to mentally assign whatever is stereotypically in that shape roundabouts, and that's what that thing is. But like you said, but the time that our brains say, wait a minute, something is not matching up, whether it's with the bulk of this thing or the height of this thing, your opportunity's gone. I would assume. I don't know, but I would assume.
Well, Dr. Ken Helmer, one of our longtime members, is a perfect example. This happened 2012. He was in we had set up what we called an OP, observation post. That's military lingo. But we set up an OP, and we were using what we call ghost blinds. If you're not familiar with ghost blinds, they're these panels that are about 3.5 feet tall, and you build like a small fort, and they have mirrors on the outside, so that when you look at them, you can't even really see that they're there, because they're a reflection of everything that's around them. So, I mean, if you get a chance, just Google ghost blinds, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So Ken Helmer was set up in this ghost blind in the OP, this ghost blind, and he sees this upright figure, all black, step out off the creek about 80 yards down the creek, maybe not that far, 75 yards, and it's standing there staring right at him. And he's looking at it, and he's got a rifle. He wants to collect a specimen. He's got a 30-06. He's got a 9-power scope. He's good to go. He's ready. Clear shot. No trees, just a creek bed. And he's set up, and he can see right down the creek. Clear shot, everything. It steps out. It looks at him. He just sits there. He says, is that one of our guys? And then it disappears in the woods. So he's like, what did I just see? And boom, there it comes again. And it steps out again, a second time. Just as he takes the rifle and puts it up on the edge, it steps away and it's gone. Helmer's thinking he's seeing a guy. He's seeing a person. But after he's had time to now process, 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds after he saw what he just saw, he realizes this was not a guy. It was all black, totally black from top to bottom. And it had a very thin waist, big wide shoulders, just the classic look.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a great case of how one of our guys, a seasoned investigator, and that was his first time to see one, but still, I wouldn't say that he was 100%, but he had bought into this already. He was already thinking that it's probable that they exist. And he's out there trying to collect a specimen. So he's already bought into it. But when he sees it, he still can't connect the dots immediately. He still wonders if this is a dude that he's seeing.
Right.
And it's not until the thing's gone and his opportunity's gone that he realizes, oh my God, I just lost an opportunity to put one on a slab.
Right. Yeah. And I think
Adam, 6 seconds.
Right.
Seconds.
Oh, yeah. Right. I think that's
6 seconds. You got the sticks. Take your weapon off safe. Boom. Done. That's 3 seconds. If he had that ability to connect the dots before he saw it, that's very hard to do.
Oh, sure. And I think, and that brings up another good point too. There's a huge debate and I think you probably know where I'm going with this, within the world of Bigfoot and wood apes, and I want to talk about the origins of that name as well. But the kill or no kill argument. The people, I think most people within the community
call it the no kill versus science argument.
There you go. I think, and I'm not afraid to. I'm right there with you. I think that I don't think that there really is necessarily an argument. I think that you get some people who begin to assign, because something could potentially move like us and something could potentially resemble the shape of a human being or whatever. They're going to assign these non-scientific thought processes behind how you have to prove the existence of such. And I don't know if there's necessarily a way to be scientific without having a type specimen in front of you to say, here it is. Because as we know with computers and things today, there's been so many videos, and you can't accept a video at face value anymore. Not with the proficiency that people have kind of developed with Photoshop and editing tools and things like that. So anyway, yeah, go into that kind of where you guys stand on that no kill versus science. Kind of how did you formulate that idea? And I assume you've had pushback in the community also.
Well, we really don't. I mean, we don't pay much attention to that. It's any pushback, it doesn't matter. Most of us are top A personalities, and that's the reason we're still doing this, and that's why we're doing it. At the level we're doing it, because we don't really care.
Yeah.
We know what we've done, and we know how
Right.
how the communities of science operate. And we laid that case out in our paper that we put out last year, the Washington Project monograph. We laid our case out. It's backed by science. There's plenty of examples. And so we're well over that part. We don't really explain ourselves to anyone anymore. That's what we're doing. We're collecting a specimen because that's what science requires. Science requires that you must be able to independently verify a species, particularly a new species, and something like this. This is not some subspecies of a monkey. This is probably and possibly an entirely new species, or it's an extant species that was thought to have been extinct. So science is not going to accept anything less.
Right. You're not looking for a species of a subspecies of butterfly or roach or anything. This is
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is something that is total. This is something that is going to shake the anthropological world to its core. It's going to shake the paleontological and wildlife biological worlds to their core. It's going to shake the world up when somebody comes in and lays this body out in front of the world and says this thing is real, it exists. How many anthropology books are going to have to be rewritten?
Right.
How many books on evolution are going to have to be rewritten? I mean, it's going to shake so many things up. And and we just had a wildlife biologist join our organization, Angelo Caparella from Illinois State University, he deals specifically with this sort of thing, and he's collected hundreds and hundreds of species, of novel species, of type specimens, and there's so much that can be learned. First of all, you learn that the species is real, but then you learn things. If you collect the entire specimen, you learn things about their diet. You learn things about their ecology. You learn things about how their brain works. Can they produce any sort of vocal sounds? There's so much you learn. What are their requirements? What are their needs? And oftentimes, now we're not advocating this with wood apes, but oftentimes when they collect new type specimens for new species, they collect several, male, female, young, old, because then they can learn more to protect the entire species. And people who are basing everything on emotion, or they anthropomorphize. They want to equate these things with humans. Then sure, they're going to say that, yeah, you can't kill one. No, that's just not moral. Well, that's not logical. You know, you're being emotional. You're basing it in emotivism, and just, you know, we're going after this. We're using the scientific method, and we're being, you know, scientific in our approach, and that's what you have to do to have a new species listed. And again, we lay the case out. If you haven't, you need to read the Ouachita Project monograph. We lay our case out. You know, many references and sources, and so it's pretty clear cut.
Right, and I think to your point, I think a lot of individuals who would kind of go back to more of that sci-fi novel Sasquatch that can cloak and is an alien and can speak to you, and the whole, not that I disagree necessarily with the idea, the concept of infrasound, but almost the laser beam type infrasound that you hear a lot of people kind of make reference to, like, oh, this guy over here, my buddy that was standing right next to me got zapped and he was down immediately and he was vomiting and whatever else. Like, I think if you do have a type specimen to sit there, I think a lot of those things that people may actually perceive to be real there are very like you say, flesh and blood kind of reasons behind those things. Whether or not the creature can produce infrasound like elephants and tigers and things like that, you're going to see that with a type specimen. You're going to see, obviously, the physiology of this creature, the physical stature that, oh my gosh, yeah, they are incredibly powerful. And by my background is in strength and conditioning and things like that. So then looking at things like just the musculoskeletal system of the creature, no wonder it can move so quick, and no wonder people think that, how did it disappear that fast? Well, no, it didn't disappear. It literally is so big, so powerful, so strong, and so adapted to its environment that, to our eyes, because we're not familiar with seeing something that big move that quick,
Right.
I think you're going to see a lot of those things. It's more than just taking, I think, what a lot of people think, like in King Kong, strapping a creature into chains and parading it around the country. Like, look what we got here. I think that's where people pull this notion of that's what we need a type specimen argument is, when it really is just adhering to the scientific method. It's forming a hypothesis, and then you have to have some sort of specimen to either verify that. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that's and like you said, people want to get emotional about the subject, and I just don't think that you can. Science, I think a characteristic of true science, of good science, is it is void of that emotional attachment. It is merely looking for an answer to a question by the means necessary to do so. And I think that's a hard concept for some people to grasp.
Now, I understand if some people, they say it's not ethical to do that. I can understand that, because I don't want to have to kill one.
Right.
I really don't, and we don't want to. We don't. I wish we didn't have to. I wish there was another way. And, really, I wish somebody else would do it. To be quite honest.
Right.
I mean, we're going to be vindicated no matter what.
Right.
We've got a monograph. We've got a 200-page monograph out there that documents all this behavior, documents all these activities. So we're going to be vindicated. It doesn't matter if somebody in the Northwest or somebody in Florida or wherever. If somebody brings in a body, man, we're going to be fist pumping and smoking cigars.
Right.
And,
Sure.
you know, and so I wish a truck would just hit one.
Right.
You know,
Well, that's what.
the best would be for somebody to find one that's just died. That would be the best. That would be the best. Or somebody captures a small one some way, like, you know, I don't know, somebody, maybe a mother dies of natural causes, and then it leaves a young one, and then a couple of hunters just, you know, capture this young one. I mean, that would be great.
Right. That's what I was going to ask. I from being kind of an avid follower of the NAWC and a very low level member, but I'm happy to say that I am. You know, I'm sure that you guys would be just as happy to stumble across a dead body in the middle of a trail somewhere and drag it out of the woods as you would to actually have to take a specimen. You know.
Well, yeah, because now we're focused on specimen collection. We would love to be focused on behavioral documentation. We would love that.
Right. Right.
You know, because in our mission, I mean, that's part of our mission now, but it's secondary. It's ancillary to specimen collection. And it would be great if somebody else did the dirty work. And then we could just totally go into, you know, just documentation of behavior, because I understand it's hard for people to understand, but we have a troop there that we've been interacting with, that we've seen. And so, and if anybody from anywhere else on the continent brings one in, we're vindicated. It's cool.
Right.
I mean, please do it if you can. You know? I wish there were 2 or 3 other organizations that had the wherewithal, that you know, we're not blinded by emotion or whatever, and we're trying to collect a specimen. If we had 2 or 3 groups of large groups of good, solid organizations trying to do this in different parts of the country, man, especially with what we've learned, and then we could pass on to them.
Right.
You know, and we keep saying to ourselves, you know, we wish we could find a troop of apes that are uneducated, because we've been there for, you know, doing this the Ouachita Project specimen collection since 2011, 2010, but 2011 is when we really started doing these summertime research projects, and so we've learned a lot. But guess what? They've learned a lot as well, and it's not getting any easier. It's getting harder for us, because we lost so many. We had opportunities and we weren't able to capitalize on them, just like the one I told you about with Helmer. You know, and they learn. Chimpanzees and orangutans and gorillas—they're all extremely intelligent, and you only usually have to teach them once or twice, and then they learn and they don't forget.
And you don't get another chance. That's your that's opportunity gone with whatever method you were employing at that moment.
That's it. So we have to constantly keep, got to come up with new, creative ways, things that are different, they've never seen before. We've got to keep this fresh. You know, you got to try to stay one step ahead. And we're trying to do that. You know.
Well, let's talk about Area X a little bit, because I think if people are familiar with the NAWAC, I think that is kind of like the probably what a lot of people are familiar with is Area X. And can you kind of go into what that is and kind of how it was discovered and what's going on there with, you know, you talked about summer teams and things like that. Can you kind of talk to us about that a bit?
Yeah, Area X is just it's an area that the NAWAC has focused on, particularly over the last 6 years. And it's not called Area X because of any sort of mysterious, creepy, It's called Area X because we had a number of areas, and it just happened to end up as Area X in the alphabet. Right. We had Area Z, we had Area B, we had Area Y, we had Area S. We had so many different areas, and this just happened to be given the name Area X. Mm-hmm. And and it just happened to be the place that's turned out to be apparently the most lucrative in terms of, trying to verify the existence of this animal. And so the Area X moniker stuck. We like it. And I guess people seem to like it too. They think it's kind of creepy sounding or whatever, but That wasn't by design. It just happened to be that way. It could just as easily have been Area Y if National Park Service hadn't booted us out of there, or Area Z if, you know, National Forest, we hadn't, you know, run out of our time there. And so, so it's just an area in the Ouachita Mountains, which is about it's a nice mountain range that runs east to west through Arkansas and Oklahoma, about 300 miles wide, about 100 miles from north to south, and it's extremely remote, very rugged. They're very old mountains, very rocky. Some parts of North Georgia, Eastern Tennessee are similar, but I think the Smokies, I think these are a little rougher than the Smokies. They seem more primitive to me. And there are fewer inhabitants. I mean, the area where we are in southeastern Oklahoma along the Arkansas-Oklahoma state line is among the least populated areas in the entire state of Oklahoma. And Oklahoma has about 3 million people, which is less than Dallas-Fort Worth. So you've got all these people in Oklahoma spread out. Most of them are in Oklahoma City and Tulsa. And then everywhere else in Oklahoma, there are hardly any people. And this is one of those places. And it's, you know, there's just not very many people there at all. And so it's a great place. It's you know, we originally were on some private land, some cabins. we're no longer in the cabins there. We've since moved on to national forest land, and you know, we're talking the Ouachita ecoregion is, you know, about 11 million acres of mountains and hardwood and pine forest. And so it's a very rich area, and some people that are, you know, they have this prejudice that these things can't exist outside the Northwest. You know, I would just ask them to take a trip down into the Ouachita Mountains of Oklahoma and Arkansas, and you're going to see very quickly that, you know, your impression was wrong. And there are other places in the South like that, but this place, I mean, this is it's an awesome place. It's just rich place. So we focused on that area after, you know, Alton Higgins found some tracks there back in 2001, and that led him to do some investigations there. And then I joined him in 2004, and we had a camera trap project that we implemented, and that was not just Area X. That was in several of our areas. I think 4 or 5 dozen camera traps over the 5-year period, about $50,000-$60,000 worth of investment in that to try to get photographic evidence. So we didn't come to a position that we you know, wanted to actively try to collect a specimen overnight. This is an evolutionary thing. It's developed over a period of about 15 years, 2 decades. And we're in 2010, we finally just said, okay, enough. We had an internal debate, and it wasn't much of a debate because it was most of the members were pretty much ready to go to that step. We pretty much knew that science was on our side, and that it was a necessary evil. It's a necessary thing to collect a specimen. And so that's, you know, it wasn't something that we just jumped into without a lot of forethought or a lot of discussion. No, we had all that, and you know, and so and in 2010 is when we began to determine that we were going to need to be in any one given area more than just 4 or 5 days, more than 3 days, which is typically what people do. They go out for 3 or 4 days or a couple of days, and then they pack up and they go home. And, you know, we found out just through trial and error and our own experimentation and observations that it's not going to work. You're going to have to be there longer. For whatever reason, they seem to be very, very patient animals, and maybe there's just a history of interaction with humans that has taught them that they just need to wait and be patient. And after a few days, the humans, particularly if they start throwing rocks or they start beating on trees or they start huffing and grunting and growling, the humans pack their cats up. Or oftentimes they won't even pack up; they just leave everything. I've talked to a number of witnesses who just leave everything there, and they get in their trucks and they just bug out. You know, they get the heck out of Dodge because some sort of throwing rocks at them. You know, or they see one, and all bets are off from that point forward. They don't even want to go back in the woods anymore. So these things are probably used to that after, many, many centuries of dealing with humans. And so we learned that, okay, if you wait them out, if you can endure what they throw at you, figuratively and literally, then, you might have some success with this. And so that pretty much is what led us to what we do now, which are prolonged summertime research operations. Summertime, because most people in the South don't go in the woods in the summertime. It's just too hot.
It is so hot.
Most people say, "Oh man, it's too hot to go out in the woods. I rather go out there in the fall time in the winter. I can't wait to get out in the woods then." But not in the summertime, man. They're not gonna, they're gonna stay in their air conditioning. They're gonna, they're just not gonna go out. So we found that it was a great time, not only for that, because people don't go in the woods, but we also found through the journals of the cabins where we had been summoned by these people. They kept journals that all this activity would pick up in May, June, July, August. And so that's what we decided to start doing, is going out in the heat of the summer and just manning up and just dealing with it. You just go out there, and what we do is we send out a team for a week, who then gets relieved by another team who's there for a week, who then gets relieved by another team who's there for a week. And so you can deal with it for a week. And we had guys go in there and stay 2 or 3 weeks at a time, and it gets to you after a while, because the places we go are so remote. You don't have any amenities, and you're usually eating freeze-dried meals, or you're living out of a Yeti cooler, or whatever. And generally you have to bathe in the creek and that sort of thing, and so that wears on you after a while. So what I tell most guys is, it's 10 days is about the max. Go in there for 10 days, then come out for a week or two, and then you can go back in. But especially if you're in there and there's a lot of things going on, that can weigh on you too, if you've never experienced it. And some of our guys went through that. We've had guys going there, big strapping dudes, tough suckers, man. I mean, badasses go in there and they come out with their tail between their legs.
Yeah.
And just, we had one guy just literally he was a blubbering, whimpering, just broken down individual when he went out of there. He just couldn't handle it.
I would think that that's something that probably a lot of people don't bank on going in. I think, like you said, you've got some really, really tough, field smart guys and gals heading out there. But I think a lot of I think, me personally, I think the biggest thing to me would not necessarily be don't get me wrong, it would be hot, I would be uncomfortable, but the mental fatigue that would happen in a split second when you're all, like we talked about earlier, all that you think that comes crashing down at one time. Yeah, I can imagine that is quite that.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, I can just imagine that would be just quite that. A realization of something that you've wondered and you're out there looking for, and you're tired and you're hot and you're hungry, and then all of a sudden there it is, and I mean your world would be rocked from that point forward.
Yeah, and just think for a minute that you're out there and you're 400 meters from your truck, and you're 15 miles from civilization, or from a store, from a country general
store. Not even civilization, just a store.
Yeah, right. You're hundreds of miles. You're 200 or 150 miles from civilization. Just think of what that does to you. You're not able to just get in your truck and just bug out and just get the hell out of Dodge. I mean, and you don't want to be labeled a coward. You're not gonna go back to camp and say, guys, I'm out of here. No, you're gonna stay there. And then more stuff happens. And then the next day, more stuff happens. And then more stuff. And it's really, truly a form of PTSD. I mean, it's not to the level of combat. I'm not saying that, but it's a level of PTSD that I've seen in some people. It really, really can mess with some people, man. I've seen it firsthand.
Right.
And we try to prepare people, we try to prepare them. But it's like you said, you've suddenly been ripped into this other room now where this thing is real, and you were in this other room where it wasn't real, and now you're like, oh my God, this thing is freaking real, and it just all comes crashing down on you. And some people, man, they just want space. They want to get out of there. They want to go back to their bed, their soft wife, their job. They want to get back to normal, and
did you have that experience? Did you have that kind of ripped from what you knew and into something else, or was yours a kind of a calmer ordeal? Like, what was your kind of this thing is real? I thought it was, and now I'm 100% certain that there it is.
Well, I wasn't even sure. I would say that when I was, but the thing about me is I had the ability to just get in my truck and leave, because I was 50-50. I was investigating sightings with Higgins. This was just shortly after, I hooked up with Higgins and I started talking to witnesses. Just because I was talking to witnesses did not mean I bought into this, that this thing was real. I still had all the nagging questions that people have. How is this possible? How can this thing be real? I thought it could be real, but I could not wrap my mind around it. And the thing that ripped me into the room of reality was when my wife and I went to investigate a sighting that a couple claimed they'd had on the Trinity River in southeast Texas. We went to a ball game down in Houston to see the Cardinals beat the Astros badly. And then we left there, and then we drove to the Trinity River where this couple claimed they'd had this sighting. My wife saw this trail that went off parallel to the river, and it was about 7:30 at night, 8 o'clock, something like that. It was in May. I think it was May 29, 2004. And she saw this trail. She said, well, let's go down that trail. I said, okay. So we got out, and their sighting had been up the highway from there. This trail was across the river, and it was off to the left. And she said, well, let's just go check that trail out. I said, okay, cool. So we did, and we were walking down the trail. I got ahead of her, and I just looked. I guess we were 200 or 300 yards down the trail, and I looked ahead, and 40 yards, 50 yards ahead of me was this figure. It just did like a long jump across the trail. It looked like an orangutan, size of a man, maybe bigger. Just a burnt reddish brown, like the color of dead pine needles. And I mean, I can still see it. It jumped across the trail, took a skip hop, hit a branch, moved the branch, and just jumped and ran off into the woods. And I just turned around to my wife, and she was behind me. She didn't see it, and I was just kind of speechless. I mean, I went down to one knee, and I drew my side arm, and it's like, oh my God, there's no way. No way did I just see that. Let's go. We ran up there, and we could hear it running off in the woods, and I could smell it. It's the same smell that we smell in Area X from time to time. And that was the situation. And I told Delinda, my wife, I said, we got to go. Let's go. There it was for me. That was my escape. I was able to just leave there, get in my truck, and leave it behind me. But when we're in Area X, you're not there to do that. You're there to stay in the pocket. You're there to be a part of this team, and you're not going to let your teammates down. You're not going to let your brothers and your sisters down. You're going to stay there. And sometimes you don't have that. You can't just get in your truck like I did. I mean, I just left.
Right.
After we smelled it, and I saw what I thought was a nest that it was working on, this building. And all of a sudden the fear came over me after the realization began to just sink in of what this was. Yes, it's real. You just saw it. And I said, let's go. And we left. And so I was able to get my truck and leave it behind me. So had I been forced to stay out there that night, who knows?
Right. Was it would it be, I think one of the things that I found most interesting, especially about listening to different stories from the guys and ladies who have been in X, the fact that a lot of times it seems like these animals aren't necessarily what some would think of when they think of the Patterson-Gimlin film. This big kind of slow loafing creature that just kind of it looks, and that creature, whatever that may be, whatever your views may be, I have mine and I'm sure you have yours, whatever that is, doesn't look spry. It doesn't look like it's going to be leaping across a road or whatever. And I feel like a lot of the encounters that I've heard people relay from X, and your encounter there, have been more of the kind, like what we were talking about, a very powerful, nimble, quick creature that, is that correct? Is that more what you've seen? Kind of that.
Well, I fired at the first one I saw in Area X, and it was a big, thick animal. But the one that really looked like Patty was the one that I saw next year, the one we call Old Gray. And I'm not the only one that's seen it. And it looked just like Patty. Just like Patty. But the thing was, it was very spry. It was agile. It was huge. But at the same time, it was powerful and quick. And I was in the ghost blind, that OP. And this was a week before Helmer saw the black one I was telling you about. It was just 1 week before that. We had a rash of sightings from that OP, that ghost blind OP. And I was in there. And Rick Hayes had gone down the creek, and I heard some movement behind me. I turned to look behind me, and just when I turn back around, I see this big gray one, and it steps up on this big boulder right off the side of the bank, and then from the boulder up onto the bank, and it's gone. And it's like it happens this fast. It's like, boom, there it is, up on the bank, it's gone. That's how quickly it was. But I can still see it in my mind's eye. It had huge legs, huge glutes, just like Patty. It was gray. It was, it was very much a gray color, like a cottontail rabbit. Had white in the glute area, and I remember seeing a light color down at the feet. I remember seeing the slope of the head. I couldn't tell you much. Had a flat face. I don't remember the arms, but it was just like Patty. It looked like a brother of the creature you see in the Patterson-Gimlin footage. And but it was extremely agile because we tested. I mean, we had, after that, we went to the rock that it stepped up on, and it's hard for us to even get up on the rock, first of all. And this thing just stepped up on it like it was nothing, and then stepped from the rock up onto the bank, which is 4 feet. It cleared like it was nothing. And for us, you have to jump from this rock up onto the bank. And after that, after I saw how, after all that was put into perspective for me, well, again, there was that fear that I felt. And I said, I was with Rick Hayes. I said, man, we got to go. We got to get back to the cabin. Let's go. Let's go. And, that was back in 2012. And so I'd already fired at one. I saw one in 2004. I fired one the year before, and then I saw this one. But it's still, it still was just like, man, we got to go. Because when I realized how big it was, and just how powerful it was, and I had a 45-70, still didn't feel comfortable.
I was going to ask you, did you feel like that would have been enough had you fired?
Oh yeah, I didn't have enough time, and besides that, Rick was downrange. But 45-70, yeah. I mean, I mostly carry 308 now. Those are different days. I mean, nowadays I don't feel any fear. I've had several sightings since then. In 2014, I saw the two that stepped out, and you just run after them.
What do you, temperament-wise? What do you think? There are certain people and shows and things that want to assign this just constant. They want to put that monster title on this animal. Personally, I would look at something like a wood ape, like a grizzly bear. Like, you're not going to run up to it and smack it on the back of the head and not expect to be ripped into two pieces. But at the same time, for me anyway, and it seems like you're similar, I don't see them actively going out and hunting someone in the woods. It was stalking me, or it was doing whatever. I think if you were to interrupt the animal feeding, or trying to or stepping on something when it's trying to it's around its family or young ones or whatever. But again, I think a lot of times people want to assign this monster title to it.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Yeah, I think it's just a more like we've talked, just being an animal. I would think that you would not you would have a healthy amount of respect for the animal and not a fear of, or I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
We have a great respect for it, but it's different. It's a different sort of relationship or whatever from 2010, 2011, 2012 to now. There have been a handful of occasions where we believed they were being aggressive, very aggressive. But by and large, that is most of the time that is not the case, particularly now. But I mean, in 2011, in the early days in 2011, they were pretty aggressive, pretty bold. 2012, the same thing. Did some very bold things. 2013, I don't know if they were quite as aggressive. 2014, absolutely not. It just seemed like it changed over the years. But I mean, I believe that much of what we've observed is a product of ritualized aggression. That is, they're trying to protect what they perceive as an encroachment in their territory, and particularly the longer we stay. And I think that's what the rock throwing is. Times it's just to garner some sort of reaction from us. Oftentimes, I think it's to try to get us out of there, because you got to think through the centuries. They've got to be hardwired, and surely, I mean, they would know that throwing rocks at people works,
right?
But it doesn't work with us. It makes us throw rocks back, or it makes us go after. And so this group, that's what I mean when I say I wish we could find an uneducated group of apes now, a group we've never encountered before, that is not used to people pursuing them when they throw rocks, that would stand their ground, like these guys used to do, and we just screwed the pooch on several opportunities to collect one. These guys don't really stand their ground really anymore. They do a lot of hit and run stuff, and they still throw rocks, they still knock on trees. They're getting harder and harder to see, harder and harder to encounter visually. And I think it's just because they're just, I don't know if they realize we're trying to collect one of them or not, but I don't know. They still have a great interest in what we're doing. They still do things around camp. They still do a lot of the things they've done. It's just that it's a lot tougher. That's what I said. It's not getting easier for us with this troop.
One question I'm not sure that I don't think I've ever heard anyone ask you is how would you think that relationship that you, whether you want to, like you said, whether you want to call it a relationship or not, that kind of relationship that you've developed with these animals over time would change if you did collect one? Do you feel like that would drastically kind of change the amount of interaction for better or worse? How do you feel like that would affect kind of what you guys are doing there? Would you be done with Area X at that moment? Obviously Yeah,
I don't think so. I mean, I took shots at one, and I'm positive I wounded one in 2011. We weren't besieged. We weren't besieged that night. We weren't run out of there. We weren't attacked. And that didn't happen after that. There were some events well after that, the next year, that they were pretty aggressive. But, again, we stood our ground, and, they didn't run us out. Now, that doesn't mean we're not prepared for a worst case scenario. That's something that carries over from my military training. We have other military veterans and other professionals, firefighters and law enforcement, that are prepared to deal with the unexpected. And that's how you train. You train for the unexpected and hope for the best. And so we have what we call a doomsday scenario that we're hopefully prepared for in case we are able to collect a specimen. We're prepared, hopefully, for the possibility that others in the troop may try to take drastic action against us to maybe even keep the dead body or to kill us in retribution. So we're prepared for that, we hope. I don't think that's going to happen, but we leave that open. We definitely are mindful of that.
Mm-hmm.
So we've taken steps, hopefully, to help us in that scenario.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that speaks to kind of the thoroughness also of the NAWAC. Like I appreciate the fact that you guys do have those kind of situations worked out ahead of time, because I think a lot of people, and being I don't want to just kind of generalize people. At least I live in Southeast Tennessee, right on the southeastern Tennessee, North Georgia kind of
Chattanooga,
line.
right?
Say what now?
You Chattanooga, right?
Yes. Yeah. So I think a lot of people, I know some people that I've had some interaction with via the website and everything, talk about how they wanted, they're in the area around here, and what they're taking it, they're just bringing a gun out into the woods and going to try to shoot one or whatever. They don't think about the steps necessary after that. You're going to have to get this creature out of the woods. You're going to have to know where you're taking it afterwards. You're going to have to decide how quickly do you alert any kind of news media outlet? Do you not? Is it immediately, is it you're going to wait until you have this thing secure in a way, and so on and so forth. And I don't necessarily know, and I don't want to keep you too long tonight, but I'd love to sit down and talk at another time too about kind of your thoughts on where exactly these animals are, and all over the country and things like that. But you guys in the NAWAC seem to, I just think it's commendable that you do think a few steps ahead, and kind of going back to your military background, that was a necessity at one point, and again you're able to utilize that kind of that same thought process and something like this too. That's really that's a testament, I think, to you guys, and how well you've got this stuff laid out.
Yeah, I mean, you have to try to plan for every contingency. I mean, no plan survives contact with reality, but you still need to plan. You still need to make plans and prepare for the worst. And we try to do that. We try to take into account every different contingency. Hopefully, we've covered everything. But as I said, sometimes reality teaches you that you haven't. And in which case, we'll just do the best we can. But we absolutely have a post-collection plan. We've got it all laid out. We've got a protocol for it, and we know exactly what we want to do. Hopefully, reality will cooperate with us and allow us. But we do have it laid out, and we would love to be able to implement that protocol, but we haven't been able to.
How's 26? I won't keep you much longer. How's 2016 been, as far as you have groups out there now?
Yeah, we have a team.
Is it any updates from the field?
Well, I mean, over the last year, we focused on our nano tags. Trying to tag one of these animals and then tracking the tags. And we did tag one, and we've worked very hard to try to get into range of that tagged animal. We think the tag has died now. We think the tag is no longer active. The radio transmissions are definitely not coming out, and we think that the battery expired. So, but we do think we were successful in tagging one. So that's been the highlight, and that's that we think we're very pleased with the fact that we believe that we were able to tag one. And we tracked this particular tag over about 35 miles over several mountain ranges and several valleys, and he's definitely seen some real estate. Whatever is on the other end of that tag can negotiate those mountains and those valleys like a mountain goat on steroids.
That's what I was going to ask you. Is the terrain covered consistent with what you would expect one of these creatures to be able to do? It's something that would.
We're actually amazed. I mean, I personally, I was amazed at I had no idea that if that's what we tagged, and I believe it is. That's what we tagged. I am amazed at. Well, even if it's not an ape, something that got that tag has been all over God's creation down there. And it's made this huge honking circle through through, and much of it, and I want to focus this. I want you to understand, much of this tracking period has been in the deepest part of bear hibernation time. Okay, the black bears in Area X in the Ouachita Mountains, they are mostly the progeny of Minnesota and Manitoba black bears. They still retain the habits of their ancestors. That is, they go into deep hibernation beginning late November, early December, and they stay in hibernation till mid-March. We have tracking data through December, January, February, and March of a highly active, large animal that covered a lot of terrain.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of terrain. Lots of nasty terrain.
So not only if it was a bear, it would not be hibernating, but it would be doing the direct opposite of hibernating and moving more so than it would even be traditional in a more active season. So odds are it's not a bear.
Not a black bear. It wasn't a black bear. No, no. I mean, our photos from Area X over a 5-year period substantiate that about black bears. We got none. We had no photos of bears in the wintertime. None. Zero. Hundreds in the spring, summer, and early fall. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. We were able to predict just based on our own data when the bears were active. And then we had some wildlife biologists from Oklahoma State confirm that with us. They're black bear biologists. They're tagging black bears in the Ouachitas. We've encountered them several times. They've confirmed to us when the bears go into hibernation and when they're active. And this animal was active during bear hibernation season. Very active, extremely active.
Mm-hmm. That's really interesting. That's compelling to say the least. I mean, something moving like that during that's very interesting. Well, what are you last question, are you still as passionate about this as you were in the beginning, or have the years worn on you at all? Or
well, yeah, I mean, it gets from time to time it gets old. I mean, what gets old about it though is you just get frustrated at your inability to collect the specimen. Mm-hmm. When you've seen one like I have, man, I know it's hard for you to believe, but I've seen one several times, a number of times. Mm-hmm. I've seen several of them, and when you've been privy to that sort of knowledge, and the whole world thinks it's just a joke, or much of the world thinks it's a joke. I mean, I don't see how. I think you then have an ethical responsibility to then bring it into the light of the world, because there's no telling what this species can do for us. Learning about ourselves, maybe in terms of medicine, diseases. There's no telling, man. And I think the NAWAC, so many of our members have had these experiences, observations. We have an ethical responsibility to the world, to science, to turn it upside down with this species and bring it before the light of the world. We really do. And I can't sit on it. Mm-hmm.
So suffice it to say, this is the NAWC's work is just indefinite. It's going to continue going forward, and I, for one, I'm incredibly happy about that. I'm just happy to know that there's some group of individuals out there that are actually taking this and looking at it from a scientific perspective, critically thinking about what you're doing, and actually have the knowledge and kind of the field expertise to carry that out in a way that would that eventually, I think the odds are in your favor. Eventually, with enough persistence, you're going to get one. Coming from me, right? Me now speaking as like we talked about before we kind of went on the air here. Me speaking from someone who is a believer, in the sense that I believe that the probability is there, and hearing stories from you and gentlemen like yourself that I do respect and respect kind of the way that you're approaching this subject. I think it's a matter of time until you get there. And I look forward to getting to say, hey, I was on the NAWAC forums. I talked to those guys before they found one, so that makes me a very proud Bigfoot blogger from Southeast Tennessee. That's not that's an interesting title to put on yourself there.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
wouldn't get me many dates.
I mean, yeah. I have to be honest with you. There's a part of me that's very, very much looking forward to just cooking up a huge honking plate of crow, and and force feeding it to a lot of people. And I'm going to do it with
Sure. Yeah, I wouldn't blame you at all. Would not blame you at all. Well, man, thank you so much for taking time to talk to me. I'd like to, if we could, I've got more questions. I'd like to, at another point here in the not too distant future, kind of talk again and get into some more stories of Area X and kind of just what you think about the state of kind of the Bigfoot in general. I keep saying Bigfoot, but wood ape. I think that's
it's a common name. That's what most people know it by. But we prefer wood ape because we believe it is a species of anthropoid. We believe it's a species of great ape, and they live in the woods and wood apes.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. That makes sense to me. Well, thank you again, man, for sitting down and talking to me. And it's been awesome. I'm a proud member, and I will continue to be so. So I will. I'm going to click the old broadcast off here, and I think we should still be.